Malevolence by F.R. Donaldson. Chapter 1. This is hell, Ben Campbell thought. He dragged his fingers through his dark shaggy hair with frustration as he joined the busy motorway. Red tail lights shone brightly in the low light, distorted by water on the windscreen. The window wipers were on full, yet did little to keep the screen clear for long. Ben groaned inwardly as he edged his way into the forming tailback that usually built up at this time of night. Cars lined up nose to tail, driven by irate drivers who gripped their steering wheels as they shouted futilely at the driver in front to move the few feet clear ahead of their car. Drivers became angrier with every passing second. Horns blared at queue jumpers and those who allowed them to slip in a few yards down the already heavily congested road. Please, let me get out of here soon. It was bad enough that he could hear the car horns, the revving engines, and the rain that battered down on the metal roof of his car, but Ben could also hear every thought that emanated from the drivers surrounding him and beyond. He wondered if his head might explode, worried that one thought too many might force his skull to crack open and kill him. Ben had felt this way every day since Louise Somerville irrevocably changed him. Since then, he lived every second of his life continually tuned into every mind that came close enough for him to sense. His life, and the lives of his friends, had been ruined by the actions of the woman his brother had fallen in love with. Louise was a biology lecturer at the university where his brother Nathan worked. Nathan had fallen for the golden-haired newcomer almost as soon as he saw her. A casual dresser, Louise was able to maintain an alluring sophistication whatever she wore. Her long hair was always tied in double braids that hung down her back in thick ropes, her eyes an icy blue that glistened in any light. It was easy to understand why Nathan had fallen for her. He was not the only one to fall into a steaming pile of lust whenever her bright eyes wandered in their direction. She had just about every man and more than a few women on campus begging for her attention. But it was Nathan that she had chosen. Although now, Ben was completely aware that Louise had cast her magic with more than just her physical attraction. He had not realised this until recently, and much too late to do anything about it. Once Louise had conducted her research, and immediately after the instant that followed, Nathan disappeared without even a goodbye. Ben had not heard from his brother since. Ben's mind drifted as he reluctantly revisited the day in which his life had been changed forever. His anger was only surpassed by his constant fear. He was trapped in a situation unlike any he could ever have imagined. He was not alone, as his fiancée, a few of his friends, and two of his brother's colleagues also suffered the same hell. One night spent at his brother's house had changed them all, forever. He was torn from the wretched memories as a car horn sounded behind him. Fucking move! The traffic was slowly moving, and the car in front was now a little further away. Ben's mind was flooded with a barrage of insults from the angry driver behind him, who gave another loud blast of his horn. Ben put the car in gear, pulled forward and stopped behind the other car a few yards down the road. He shook his head, attempted to block out the noise around him, both heard and perceived. Voices, thoughts, rain and car horns. The din grew louder until his head hurt and the sounds deafened him. Unable to block out the noise, he chose instead to pick out a few of the voices in his head and focus on them. The man in the car to his right was thinking of ways to prank his work colleagues. The woman to his left was hoping she would make it home in time to say goodnight to her kids. The man in front was breaking his heart as he cried for the woman he lost so suddenly in the hospital that morning. His lament was an unbroken, crushing pain that washed over Ben in endless waves of grief. Behind him, the noisy, angry driver continued to swear and curse the traffic. His thoughts were dark, his future intention to take his frustrations out on whoever was at home when he finally got there. Further down the road, someone was reminiscing about a sunny Saturday afternoon he spent walking with his wife, and he wished he was there now. Another mind delved into terrible darkness that Ben desperately tried to block. The deplorable thoughts sickened him. Every minute of every day, Ben heard such thoughts from friends and strangers alike, and every minute of every day it almost drove him to madness. The traffic began to move, slowly but steadily along the rain-soaked road. Ben turned on the radio in an attempt to drown out the thoughts of those around him. His head ached from the stress of actively receiving the thoughts of others. Suddenly Ben's mind was assaulted with powerful thoughts that took his breath away, thoughts of misery that affected him so extremely that he could barely think or breathe. Pete! Pete! Oh God, no, Pete! Don't leave me! Cold desolation consumed him, and Ben understood why the traffic had ground to a halt. He desperately wished to close his mind to the feelings. No, no, no! Don't touch him! Peter! The thoughts of the grief-stricken woman washed over his mind and soul like a torrent of freezing cold water. The bleak agony affected him so much he found himself sobbing. The awful feelings only worsened as he drove close enough to also hear her anguished cries. Ben blinked away tears of sorrow that gathered in his eyes as he momentarily joined the woman in her grief. He experienced her torment as his own. After what felt like an eternity, he passed the point of the crash and her thoughts and anguish faded away. Distance put her out of his mental range, and he sped on to the now freely moving motorway. The traffic dispersed as drivers carried on to their destination and acknowledged the incident as a sad excuse for being late. Ben wiped at his eyes roughly as a low moan escaped his lips. He tried to forget the woman's heartbreak that for a brief moment had been his own. But emotions tied with such sudden and great loss were impossible to forget or push aside. The woman's lingering thoughts continued to filter through his mind, still able to trick him into believing he had suffered the loss. When will this nightmare end? Ben asked himself, though he was aware it never would. He steered the car up the slip road 2 junctions before his usual, eager to get off the motorway and find a quiet place to park, somewhere devoid of others that might contaminate him with their thoughts. He drove with no real destination in mind until he saw a signpost for the local country park. It was neither the time nor the weather to be walking in the woods, but it was likely to be the most peaceful place in the area. Ben stopped at the far end of the car park, pulled on the brake and got out of the car, slammed the door behind him as he walked with shoulders hunched against the cold and heavy rain, walked briskly down a dark path, only just able to see where he was going. He walked for a long time, just trying to empty his mind and forget what he experienced on the road, desperate to find some peace within himself, but unable to find the ataraxia he wished to achieve. He could feel the presence of animals and birds in the vicinity. Many were tired or asleep, some were awake and on the hunt as others foraged or hid. Their minds were wild and feral. He was unable to understand a single thought that ran through their tiny heads. In a way, it was strangely comforting. Ben stopped walking when he reached the river that ran through the woods, sat down on a worn, weathered seat fashioned out of an old tree trunk, looked out over the watery canvas in the gloomy light. His heart was aching, his breathing hitched, and Ben choked in desolation. He wanted to scream, purge himself of the pent-up emotions that threatened to drive him insane. Instead, he closed his eyes and sat there in silence and immersed himself in it, concentrated on breathing, aware of neither the passage of time nor the deepening of the darkness. Damp cold invaded his body, but he was uncaring of the trembling it invoked in his muscles as they attempted to generate heat. It reminded him that he was alive, that he was still Ben Campbell, not some freak test subject, not some empathic sponge unintentionally abused by everyone around him. The mobile phone in his pocket began to ring and broke the silence of the night with its brass tune. He ignored it for a while, content to listen to the simple melody, and allowed it to ground him back in reality. Whoever was calling was persistent, for as soon as it cut to voicemail, they called back. Ben allowed it to happen 3 times before curiosity got the better of him. He pulled the phone out and looked at it. The number displayed was not one he recognised, nor was it stored in the phone memory. He answered it hesitantly. Hello? His query was answered with only silence from the other end. Hello? He was about to hang up when the person at the other end eventually spoke. Ben, it's me. His heart nearly stopped when he heard his brother's voice for the first time in weeks. Nathan? Where are you? A cold feeling of dread began to spread through his chest as Nathan fell silent. Nathan? Ben, I think I made a mistake. Nathan's voice sounded strange, almost as if he was speaking in his sleep. I'm going to make everything right. You know I love you, right? Nathan, what's wrong? Nathan! The line was dead. Nathan was gone. Shit! Ben stared at the phone, then quickly scrolled through the menu in search of a number, then hit dial. He was relieved when he heard his fiancée pick up. Mia, it's me. Where are you? Ben? Where the hell are you? Do you know what time it is? Where are you, Mia? At home. Why? Her voice was sleepy. Ben was sure she had just fallen asleep on the couch waiting for him. Nathan just called. He heard a thud come from the other end and surmised it was Mia dropping the phone. When she spoke again, her voice was no longer sleepy. It was scared and awake. Where is he? I don't know, but he said he'd made a mistake and that he was going to make it right. He could almost hear the thoughts running through Mia's mind, knew she was thinking about the death of Chloe McHugh and what Nathan's sudden reappearance might mean for them. Mia, look, I'm on my way, okay? Keep the doors locked and pack your stuff. I'll see you soon. Bye. Ben hung up and pushed the mobile phone back into his pocket, jogged back up the dark path and headed for his car. His melancholy was gone. Now all he felt was fear. If you have enjoyed this short chapter, please consider buying my book. If you need more persuasion, I'm putting up chapter 2 on my site. All links are below. Thank you for listening.